Welcome, we got Abhi and Adam here with Iconic Motorbikes. I want to talk to you about two of Honda's coolest creations of all time, the NR750 from 1992. We've got a stock example right here, we've got a customized example right here, and we want to spend the next few minutes talking to you about what made the NR750 special, and then also the cool things that we did to this one, which happens to be for sale right now if you want to put it in your garage.
There's a lot of bikes that we can talk about, and I have to look up specs, right? Like, we were going to talk about the NCR bikes today, and I got to tell you, I don't know a lot about those bikes, but I know a lot about these.
Yeah.
And I didn't really get the NR750. I didn't really get it. I didn't know about it a whole bunch when I was growing up. For whatever reason, it didn't really show on my radar. I didn't really understand why it was so magical until I was at this really crappy auction in Vegas. I couldn't resist. But anyway, I saw one there, and I was just like, wow. Yeah. Like, I get it. Like, it's not the smallest of bikes.
No, it's a bit of a porker.
How much of a porker is it?
So when Cycle World had one of these for a story, they put it on their scale, it was 544 pounds, which is a lot.
And you know, it's funny because it's got the solo tail, which is typically kind of, it goes along with, smaller race bikes. Yeah. And we keep saying about these modern bikes. Like, one of the things that people don't like a lot about modern bikes, we don't have that many up here to show you. I guess you could look at whatever. This thing did not go light on the back. Like, look at the size of this.
Yeah, it's wide.
I mean, if you're in that whole big bottom thing, this is it. There's a lot of things about this bike that are gonna make it special, and you gotta bear with us because there's a lot. Like, this is one of those bikes where it wasn't like Honda just took something and regurgitated it into something else. This is just kind of broke. I mean,
broke the mold in a lot of ways. That's for sure.
A lot of ways. I mean, the single-sided swing arm was pretty much new. Let's go off on a tangent for 1 minute. The 916, right? I love Ducatis.
Okay. Yep.
This bike was essentially 5 years newer. These were
really 1992 was the model year for these. Yeah.
Okay, so 3 years prior, the 1995 916 was revolutionary and oh my gosh, the most beautiful bike. But even Ducati admitted later. Yeah,
Tamburini did. Yeah.
That they had kind of got some of the ideas.
It was inspired.
There you go. Inspired by the NR. Undertail exhaust. Oh my gosh, so there's a 916. Yeah. Single-sided swing arm, fuel injection. I mean, it's just incredible. Honda was first to it. But they didn't really. I mean, 916 took Ducati to a whole new level. This one, I don't think Honda made a lot of money on it.
No, it was not a commercial success. And part of that was just the fact that it cost so much money when it was new. I believe something like $60,000 or $70,000 when it was brand new. We'll confirm that. But like Adam said, there's a lot of special things about it. You can see, just visually looking at it, you've got your carbon fiber bodywork, and that's something that Ducati also did with, say, the 996R or the 998R, where they had the carbon fiber bodywork and then used negative space for model names, or like you see it here. I love this, right? Everything underneath that. It's actually a carbon fiber fiberglass mat.
Overlay, it's like an overlay.
It's an overlay over it.
Yep.
But then exposed there to show that off. You've got the windscreen.
Check out this dash really quick too, by the way, and look at that.
I think that one, the battery is on that one. Yeah. We'll come here to the custom one real quick. Yeah. But you've got the windscreen. Can you show this side of the windscreen if you don't mind first? So you've got that. I think it's an iridium coating they used. So you got blue on this side, and then if you look at this side, it's got like a brown copper tint to it. And the reason they had that tint is because when you look, like Adam was saying, at that dash, it's kind of reminiscent of what the Acura NSX was doing at the time. It's just projection style dash, and the tint up here made it more visible for riders. The windscreen, incredibly difficult to find right now. I think there was one time we tracked one down, and how much did they want for it?
I sold for $10,000. It actually sold. It sold for 10 grand for a windscreen,
which is crazy. Yeah.
But it has that whole reminiscent kind of thing of the Ferraris of the time, right? You've got all those gauges, you've got these fins here, you've got these really don't serve a lot of purpose, I don't think, but
they look cool.
It's just cool. It just looks cool. And while we're at it, we always start off this way, and I guess we haven't even talked about the most important thing. We'll talk about why it's so revolutionary in a minute. We'll talk about some of the great things that make this special beyond what Abhi's already mentioned. But it's oval pistons that really make this special. I mean, it's got oval pistons. It's crazy. So we'll get back to that in a minute, but I want you to hear the sound of this one. When they're in stock form, much like that one, they don't sound that much different than, say, a VFR, but this one has a custom titanium exhaust that we had one of the guys that retired from Yoshimura do for. It took him like over a year, but check this out. Got that Honda deep kind of sound. A little different, a little throatier than what you hear on like an RC45, but and Riff, come over here 1 second. Look at all the gauges though. You've got fuel and temperature and battery and this cool tach. So let's get back to this motor. Like, what makes this motor so magical? I mean,
yeah. So Honda, for this is one of those things where for years I think a lot of people knew that Soichiro Honda wasn't the world's biggest fan of two-strokes. He was much more passionate, much more interested in four-strokes, and he really wanted to show that four-strokes were still going to be competitive in racing. So this started, the NR started as a project they were going to go endurance racing with. They had the NR750 endurance racer and a couple of other bikes like that. Unfortunately, it took them a lot of time to make things work. Some people joke that NR stood for never ready. But part of that was because it was so technically complicated. And at the time, there were rules about how many cylinders you could have, that kind of thing. And one of the ideas was, well, how can we simulate a V8, but with 4 cylinders? And the way they did that is what Adam's talking about, the oval pistons. And if you can see up here, this is too large. This is not the actual size, but the shape here is basically inspired. It's supposed to represent the...
and much like the key. See, I mean, they really went off the details.
Yeah.
The key is an oval shape.
Yeah, there you go, with the little carbon fiber inlay in it, and it says, 32 valves on it, that kind of thing. But yeah, it's crazy. Like here it says V4 oval piston, 32 valves, the result of a decade's perfection. I always love that. They show that, they actually have that phrase on the
on the wheel, on the stock one.
Oh yeah, that's right.
It's so
over here.
funny here. Like here, right again. The result of a decade's perfection, high technology for the new age. It's all about Honda. Like,
Yeah.
hey, you know what? They're putting the cojones out there. Like, hey, you know what? This is what we can do.
Yeah.
But anyway, keep going.
No, it's really incredible. And so, like Adam said, it wasn't the most commercially successful of bikes. It unfortunately wasn't even really that successful from a racing standpoint for a few reasons.
They basically challenged.
Like I think, yeah, basically the rules ended up changing to the point that it didn't make sense to keep using the design. But they'd already built it, and they wanted to have that street bike, the street version of it. Which is why these exist. We have never been able to find an exact production number. Generally, I hear estimates between 300 and 320. We had a colleague of ours that works at Honda America, or used to work at Honda of America, and I think he told us 317. So it's somewhere in that range. But that motor that we were talking about was rated at 125 horsepower. Nothing crazy, especially when the bike weighs 540 pounds. And I think we should talk a little bit about what it's like to ride. We're lucky enough that we've been able to ride a few of these. You want to share your thoughts?
Yeah, really quick. Let me elaborate a little bit further on the oval pistons as well. It was dual con rods, which is like you got 2 rods. You got basically 32 valves, which is 8 valves per cylinder. Yeah. That is what, and of course fuel injection, which really wasn't that common for this time frame.
Right.
It was pretty much one of the, and we've pulled it apart. If you look at some of the fuel, or the ones that Steve's worked on in our shop, he's got it, and it's just this crazy. I mean, just the fuel injection alone must have just been incredible feat just to get that figured out. But to ride it, okay, so my buddy Kent is a gentleman that gave us the first NR that we ever sold, and he gave us like 6 RC30s. Yeah. We moved back to Europe. He's I think he's a Kiwi initially.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, he's from New Zealand originally.
But anyway, he told me, you know what, Adam, you're not going to be that blown away, and I'm not going to. It's a lot like an RC45 that it's a little heavy.
Yeah.
And there's a big difference between the bikes, much like we talked about when we talked about the 213V, the V-S. These had a lot of different things that we saw in different countries. So let's look at this one really quick. If you notice the headlights, right? It's got these 2 headlights, and if we turn this on, you got fog lights. So in some countries, they would get standard headlights and fog lights, and typically you'd see a JDM example with a really small baffle. This is a Euro spec bike. So here you have a large baffle, right? And then on the front, the headlight's not on, but it's got a projection beam. Again, back to the 916 Ducati thing, they had the same similar kind of thing. So you've got that projection beam on one side. You don't have the fog lights anymore. And the JDM bikes had fog lights and the
regular, yeah. And one of the things Adam was mentioning, how the NR was the first in a lot of things. They were actually the first to go with this fox eye styling from a headlight standpoint. However, the headlight itself is actually one piece. It's, you know, it's about that wide. The headlight's one piece, but they simulated the dual headlights just with the fairing itself to split it up.
But Moto did that on that SB8K too, remember?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah, absolutely.
The same sort of thing. It's one light. So there's a lot of things that make this best special. The motor is the most important, but it's also a very, look at me bike, right? Sure. Beyond the statements that you see, the frame does come polished. It's one of the few bikes that comes polished. The bar ends are chrome from the factory. It has this, you know, this meaty triple clamp and kind of semi-polished master cylinders, that cool projection dash that we showed you, the single-sided swing arm. It was a very much a cool. Let me show you this really quick. Come to this side really quick. Look at how the kickstand folds up.
Oh yeah. All right, so.
So you see that? See how it?
You have to come low for this. I apologize, but this is so incredible. They, you know, they thought about the aerodynamics of this. So let me pull this back out just to show. Right, side stand down. You can see there's this gap here, and then when this comes up, there's these plates, and they overlap. But then as this comes up, they basically mount flush right in there for maximum aerodynamic goodness.
And I think it's part of the whole stealth, like this is back when the stealth fighter was kind of a neat thing, and again, like back to the Ferrari with the venting and the big tail and all that sort of thing. So let's go back to riding it again. So I've had the privilege of riding, I've ridden a JDM bike, I've ridden the UK bike, and I've also ridden the custom bike, which we're gonna talk about that more towards the end. Not mind-blowingly fast. There's actually a video on our YouTube channel from a while ago where I'm doing a wheelie on it. I kind of cheated on that, not intentionally, but there's this bump.
Yeah, you had to use the bump. Yeah, or not you have to, but yeah.
Yeah, a bit of a bump, and if you do that bump just right and you throttle it, you can kind of get a little bit, but it will not power wheelie on its own. I'm sure if you clutched one, you could probably do that, but I wouldn't want to. Just, again, it's just very,
it's definitely a heavy bike, and it's sometimes, motorcycle journalists love to use this phrase, the weight disappears once you get on the move. This bike doesn't really feel like that. You feel the weight when you're on it. It kind of feels like an endurance bike in that sense. The aerodynamics are really great. And I will say, once you do get up to speed, like I haven't ridden a UK powered bike, I've only ridden a JDM one, so that would have been restricted to about 75, 77 horsepower, which, I mean, 125 itself wasn't impressive. It's definitely not when it's 77 horsepower and 544 pounds. Yeah. But once it gets up to speed, the suspension was way ahead of its time. I was really blown away when I think I took it out to ACH, and we did a photo shoot there and that kind of thing. And it really handles well, but it's deliberate. It requires strong inputs on the bars, and she's not a light girl, that's for sure.
No, that's for sure. I mean, there's some other cool things about it. It's a one-piece upper. This whole thing is one piece. Yeah. And so it takes some time when you're working on it.
And ideally a second person to help you to take it off.
Yeah, you gotta kind of expand the outback. These are non-real functional. Sometimes on some bikes you'll see these kind of rammer tubes, if you want to call them that. That's not what these are. These are essentially just to mask the fairing stay. So underneath there is the metal fairing stay that goes through, but they look cool.
They do.
And if you get at this one angle riff, if you see this, and I'm just such a fan of this look, you can kind of see that way that glides, the wings. It's just neat. It's just really neat. So let's talk about this particular bike right here.
Yeah.
So this bike right now is in our classified section. A gentleman, actually our largest shareholder, bought it from us a couple years ago.
Yeah, 2 years ago, yep.
Enjoyed it for about a year, and they said, okay, my garage is full, I'm not really using it, and I don't want to mess it up. He didn't want to get a rock chip on anything else like that. So this one, we kind of went all off on it. Like we just went all out. And when I start thinking about how I want to design a bike or the colors, and Abhi and I are really in sync on this, we like to make a bike look like it came from the factory that way.
Sure.
I mean, sure, every once in a while you want something crazy, like fluorescent or whatever, I don't know, maybe. But like the Desmo Sedici, much like that one, or some of the bikes we've done in the past, and that's what we did with this one. And I'll tell you, I'm really happy with it because we've done some events with Honda, actually quite a few events, and we brought this bike. And so much so that some of the top, like the execs come out, or the engineers are like, I didn't know an NR came in black. It's like, oh, it didn't. In fact, real quick, if you don't mind, can you tell us really quick another thing about this bike? I'm sorry to go off back and forth, but about that color.
Oh, yes, okay. So the red, so like Adam said, these never came in black. They were almost all in red. There was like one or two that Honda France kind of painted in a deep dark blue later, but that was after the fact. That red is really, really, really difficult to replicate for a couple of reasons. One, it's got a neon base to it, and two, some of the chemicals that were used, and we see this a lot with 80s, 90s bikes, some of the chemicals used to make that happen are no longer legal to use, so it's really hard to replicate them. But yeah, this red is such a standout color, and part of the reason it gets that shine and that it's just got a unique feel to it, it's because of the neon base that gets put underneath.
If you see one of these in the sunlight, they shine and kind of have this weird reflection like you don't see on anything else. Yeah. Much like the windscreen, I noticed that I was going on PCH one time, and actually a few times, and the sun hits the windscreen in such a way that you see this bright blue just reflecting off buildings, and you're like, what the freak is that? That's just like, oh my gosh, that's so cool. Yeah. So the color is the same thing. We only have one painter that's ever been able to do this. Yeah. And with that painter, with Matt over at Color Zone, since retired, we can't even, I don't even know if we can find anybody else at this point.
It's gonna be a challenge for sure. We're working on it. Yeah.
6 of them. We did one for Michael Mann even. The
director. The guy that did Heat. He's awesome.
Yeah. So we work on his bike. He's local. He has an NR. So let's talk about back to this custom one. So obviously it didn't come in this color. We wanted to keep it much like that, but black would look great. This one was Jason at Artissimo
Artissimo Customs in Wisconsin?
Yeah, he handled this back when he was doing some stuff for us. And the reason why is the bodywork initially wasn't that clean. It had some marks here and there. We're like, you know what, let's just use that for something different. We took a Superbike front end, and you'll see some of the high-end components on this front end. It's not, the front end alone is probably like a, I don't know, $15,000 front end, if not more. I don't even know. It's a lot. Semi-floating rotors, these really bitchin' radial mount Nissan calipers, and of course these upgraded forks. So we used magnesium wheels from JB Power, and these are great.
They're originally cool. For an RC30, and up front was, I think it was like a spacer or whatever. In the back, we needed to use an RC45 hub to make that fit. But like Adam said, JP Power Magtan, magnesium wheels, and I just love the black, the black and gold theme. I think you can't go wrong with black and gold, frankly, whether it's John Player Special or whatever it happens to be. And of course, when we were looking at here, Honda did have the gold as part of the outline and things like that, and we just ran with it as well. So you have that here, same thing there. And I think it works real well with the wheels. Adam mentioned the forks, the serious upgrade with the forks up there. This also, I believe this has does it have a Penske? No, it has an Olin shock.
Yeah, we switched it out.
That's right.
I think we ended up going with an RC30 shock. We had to use, I think you might have mentioned already, an RC45 spindle. We had to use a bunch of parts from RC30, RC45, and NRs to make this work. Yeah. Steve, spent a lot of time on it. He even custom made these little heel guards because these have a tendency to go pink, like really light pink in the sun. And so that was driving us crazy. So we went with black on that. But I was trying to think, there was another thing I want to talk about.
While you're remembering, I want to highlight the exhaust real quick. So Adam did mention it, but I do want, if you can take a second to show it. So this is what he was saying, that gentleman that was at Yoshimura built this, and we gave him a stock exhaust, and he went and he just measured everything and then built it from hand. And then as you get here to the tips here, you can see it says mixers. That's him. That's his company on the side that he does.
How big they are too.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. You compare the baffles that Adam was showing earlier versus, full bore right there, which is why it's got that throaty sound to it.
So that's part of it. That's not, now it's like, I couldn't remember from a minute ago. This was initially a restricted bike. It was a JDM restricted bike. That's why you have the fog lights. That's why you don't have a projection light, that sort of thing. We unrestricted it. And how do we do that? It has the
little rubber boots on the intakes.
Yeah, that goes from the fuel injection into the intakes. They're basically cut in half, or they're blocked halfway. Yeah. We open those up. Second to that, the fuel pump wasn't putting enough fuel out to keep it going. So Steve took a Honda Civic adjustable fuel pump and turned that up, and then we did some ECU changes to it, and obviously the exhaust. And now I've ridden this bike as compared to, it's not much different than say the Euro version as far as speed goes, but it's most certainly faster than
the Japanese bike. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So that's pretty much it. I mean, for the most part, it's one of those bikes. Again, they only made a few hundred of them, plus or minus a few. They're wildly expensive. Yeah. I think the highest price one we've sold was a low mile one for like 130.
Well, we sold 150. We sold one for 150,000. It was a 0 mile bike. I can't remember if it was European or Japanese, but it came with the original manual. It came with a lot of extras that we don't see on these very often. But yeah, $150,000 is the most that we've sold one for.
I think on the lower side, we've seen some in the 70s that are just okay riders, sort of thing.
Yeah.
And that's really much what the range is. Now I'd say in today's market, 85 to 120-ish or so.
Yeah.
Parts, not easy to come by. We have quite a few. Real side quick story. We have another NR. Actually, it's already sold. And who owned it? The magazine, the writer owned it?
Tracy Hagen.
And he couldn't figure out why the dash wouldn't light up. So the bike came with all these spares. Unfortunately, he passed away, and the estate sent us the bike for us to finish and put up on for sale. But it came with all these spares. And so I'm like, why is there a wiring harness and an extra ECU and a sub-wiring harness and yada, 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 and another dash? It turned out, I'm not really loud about it, but it ended up being a light bulb. So it's this backlit projection dash kind of thing, but it has to have a light bulb. Otherwise, it's just, you can't see it.
You can't see what's going on, yeah.
$3. The beauty is, and in the grand scheme of things, is we have a bunch of spare parts now. We've got tons of stuff, right?
Yeah.
We've got lots of parts.
Yeah, absolutely. So whether it's you need to, like we actually have one that's here that unfortunately a client had a low side on, and so we're tracking down parts for him for that, a lot of body work, that kind of thing. But whether it's parts to keep these going, whether it's parts for Moto Market for someone else that wants to keep theirs going internationally, whatever it is, we do have a lot of spare parts for an NR750, which is not something that your average shop can say. It's pretty cool.
And I'll tell you, Steve's worked on so many of them now, it's almost like second nature. Every time one comes in, you go, oh, you can just look at it and go, it needs this.
I mean, he's worked, when we do videos about the motos, I joke about how Daniel's probably worked on more Tessies than anyone else in the West Coast. Steve's worked on more NR750s in the last year than possibly anyone in the world.
Yeah, he's got it down.
He's used to it, yeah.
So that's pretty much it for these bikes. That's what makes them so special. This one is actually on our classified section right now.
Yep.
It belongs to, like I said, one of our big shareholders. He's in no hurry to sell it, but
it's there if you want it. Yeah.
And we love having it here in the meantime. So thank you for joining us. Till next time.
There you go.